We're all smart, very smart people. We can figure this out. So, for those of you who are just joining us, hello everybody, what's up? I'm Barrick of Bard City. We've got Nathaniel Webb here, who is the author of the cozy fantasy novel Bard City Blues, right here. It's a very fun book. It has nothing to do with the band. This is just a very fun little coincidence. And of course, I discovered this book after I was Googling myself because I have an ego the size of like the planet. Yeah.
We all do it.
Right, yeah, because you got to figure out what the discourse is. So I found this, found the Kickstarter for it, found out I was late for the Kickstarter, found I could still buy the book anyway. And I read it, and it was very nice. And so we're here to talk with Nathaniel about, his book, about general fantasy, about anything like that. So do you want to give us a brief introduction about like what your deal is and, where people can find you and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a lot of different things, but relevant to this conversation, I am obviously a cozy fantasy author. I am also the founder of Wingraph, which is started as a magazine, has sort of expanded into general publishing, but also focused on cozy fantasy fiction. So we've got our sort of flagship magazine called Wingraph, where we basically print cozy fantasy short stories. We've done 4 issues of that so far. And then we've put out a poetry book. We put out a novella. We've put out a collection of flash fiction. And obviously Bard City Blues is published under that imprint as well. Other than that, in an earlier life, in my younger days, I was actually a touring musician myself. So a lot of that went into the book, obviously, but it also means that I am very fond of Bard City, the band. Yeah, that's probably the relevant points, at least for this conversation.
Yeah, you can definitely tell there was like some live musician blood in the in the author.
Yeah.
One of the best sort of parts that I liked about it, this isn't a spoiler because it's like in chapter 2 or something. The first time Gali walks into the bar, which and the barkeep, whose name escapes me right now, yes, she like immediately just goes, nope, nope, out, 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 because she sees him walking in with a guitar.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, here's how it is. You start by tuning it up, and then you say, well, how about I play a song? And then you shouldn't start and ask for drinks, and you're asking for food, then you're asking for money. Nope, cut it off right now, get out. That is such a mood.
Yeah.
Because I have done that exact ploy.
Yep, we've all done it, and the booking agents and bartenders and everything, they know exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I do it. My drummer and I might be like revealing a trade secret here. But my drummer and I do that for St. Patrick's Day. So I play bagpipes, and on St. Patrick's Day weekend, we go out pipes and drums and play on like the corners of Baltimore. And the way we do it is we have a Home Depot bucket, we play outside, and once we get enough cash, we walk inside to get a beer. But of course, when we walk in with bagpipes on St. Patrick's Day and everyone's already drunk, there's going to be someone who goes, oh, why don't you play it too? And I'm like, oh, no, we can't possibly do that. Someone's got to get permission from the bar. And then a whole swarm of drunk people go and say, you got to let him play. So I have never felt more called out by a book in my life.
Of the trade. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that was an insider who wrote that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in the book. Both sort of little specific incidents and stuff, but overall just the vibe. I did years in a touring band, driving around in a broken down van, getting shafted on gigs we were supposed to get paid for, and you end up coming home with less money than you started with. And I really did want to kind of capture that aspect of being a musician, because the fact is, even if you're talented, even if you're working all the time, unless you're at like the very, very top level, like being a musician is hard, man. And
it's
everybody's
difficult.
struggling to get by until you're at like, I don't know, Bono level or whatever, right? But everybody below that's having a hard time, and that's something I really did want to depict.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like starting off, like coming into a new city, truly just broke. Like spent every last penny to have this moonshot. And you can tell like the energy of trying to make it in the guild, working a job, and then them being like, well, don't work a job. You should focus on your studies. And it's
Yeah,
like, what?
yeah. Your parents are supporting you, right?
Right? Yeah. No, that's the. I kind of need the job to not,
Yeah,
starve. Um,
yeah.
but of course, then like the whole the found family aspect, and then the finding the community and all that stuff. Very good, very lovely. But the most important part is I told you that we would come up with a cocktail
Oh, yeah.
for a white dragon. Yes. And I marked that in my in my copy of the book to be like, all right, come back to this. Um, the I didn't come up with anything too crazy. It's just a vodka stinger.
Okay.
So vodka and then creme de menthe, which is going to give it that white color.
Yeah.
And then some people throw a splash of cognac in it. And here's what I think makes it the white dragon is instead of ice, uh, dry ice.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait, wait until it all goes away before you drink it. But when the dry ice then sort of evaporates away, that drink is going to be cold. And you get the bubbly smoke and all that stuff because if it's a white dragon, it's a frost dragon. So we want this thing to be cold. So the mint, the temperature, that is and then the smoke. That's my sort of attempt.
I think we did it, man. And I think this is official now. This is canon.
This is canon.
Yeah, you got to send me the recipe, and I'll do a write up or something, and we'll slip it in there.
The trouble is, I have not tried it yet.
Right, maybe it tastes terrible.
It could taste terrible. Like it could do something horrible to like the cream. I feel like it might like solidify it like ice cream.
Okay, that to me sounds like a win personally, but
Yeah, I don't know. Like I legitimately was like, it needs to have dry ice. I feel like dry ice is the thing that would separate it, that would make it magical, make it fantasy. Um, but dry ice is not exactly something you just pick up on the way home.
that's true. Yeah, yeah, you gotta
So
be a pretty stocked bar maybe. But
I will find some, and I'm going to try that. And before you put it anywhere, and then
yeah, we'll make sure it tastes good and isn't poisonous, maybe.
right, and you need to have a big fat disclosure of please do not eat dry ice. You wait until it stops bubbling, and then you can drink.
Yeah, we'll slap a warning label on there.
Mm-hmm. Or just don't drink this. You're an idiot. This is a fantasy book.
Yeah, for impact only, do not drink.
Right.
Pour it down the sink. Yep.
Take a picture. Take a pose with it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
yeah.
then,
Movie magic, special effects.
right, and then dump it down the drain. Okay. So that is my attempt at it. We do have I know there's a mixologist who is in book club who is gonna probably take a better stab at it, but we'll see.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to I got notes of what I want to talk about. Congratulations on the new tattoo.
Thank you. Yeah, so to give some backstory there, one of my other major projects, I work on a magazine called New Edge Sword and Sorcery. I think they're actually in the chat right now. Shout out. Yeah, we just did actually not a Kickstarter, a backer kit, because they now have their own sort of competing crowdfunding platform. But we did a backer kit crowdfund that ended a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
And we were trying to raise about $17,000, which is a pretty huge lift, and we hit almost 34,000. So it ended up just being a total monster success to produce the next 2 issues of this magazine, which is, I mean, this is like, Wingraph is like, I just kind of put it together. I get the best stories I can, but then I put it together, and it's just like print on demand through Amazon, right? New Edge is like totally, yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this in the stream, but like totally balls out on the on the production, right? So this is like offset printing. Every story has at least 2 illustrations, beautiful covers, all this. I mean, every possibly think of the hardcovers for these 2 issues are going to have custom end papers, and I mean, it's just like everything we can do to make this like the nicest magazine in the world. And the other thing that we did, because the crowdfund just again took off like a rocket, and we raised so much money, all of the stretch goals after like double art are basically just all that money is going to paying the artists and the writers more. So we hit our very last stretch goal, which is the authors that are in these 2 issues of the magazine are going to be making 8 cents a word, which is actually like the professional rate for a science fiction fantasy author.
Right on.
So we're super, super happy about that. I mean, 3rd issue of the magazine, and technically we're a professional market now. So yeah, it's been pretty amazing. But the tattoo thing, the reference there is we had this kind of crazy joke, basically stretch goal, that if we hit 666 backers, I would get a tattoo of the New Edge logo, and we ended up at 700 something.
Yeah.
Because we were like, let's pick a number that's like seems attainable but definitely isn't, and then like we just we blew right past it. So yeah, right. I basically just have to pick a body part at this point, and then I'm getting into a tattoo.
Fantastic. It's a good problem to have, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great problem to have. I mean, we're over the moon.
Yeah, I think from what I remember, I was getting all the emails because I'd gotten the like the soft cover tier. So I was getting all the updates for it, and I think you had like 24 hours left, and you were down like 60 backers or something.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, we were
flying past it.
Yeah, we did like a telethon essentially on the last night, Friday before we ended, and we've done this twice now. And so the first one, Oliver Brackenbury, who's our editor, he got his hands on like this choose your own adventure book that was published by TSR, the Dungeons and Dragons company, right? Published by TSR in the 80s, and it's like a fantasy romance choose your own adventure.
Oh, so fun.
Basically reading from it, and then everybody in the chat and all of us on the call were saying, here's the choice that you should make next, here's what we got to do. And so that one was a blast. And then this year we had a guy named Max Moon who has been working on an RPG called Black God's Kiss, which is based on a series of sword and sorcery stories about a character named Jarell of Joiry, who was basically the first I want to say first female sword and sorcery character to star in her own series. Okay. This was back in the right, so this is like really a big deal.
Right.
And so they are doing an RPG, or they did an RPG based on that character, and we are publishing the first new Jarell story in 85 years, because between when the author stopped writing them and now, nobody has actually gone and done the footwork to go get the rights to the character and be allowed. It's not public domain or anything. We had to go to the estate of the author and pay some amount of money for the rights and stuff. So, first new Jarell story in 85 years, and so it synced out. And so anyway, so Max Moon, this guy from the RPG, basically ran a session of the RPG for us live, which is super fun. So yeah, and it was during that telethon that we hit 666, and I was like, oh shit, okay, guess we're doing
it. That's too right on. So any idea where do you think you're gonna get it? Like
yeah, that's such a good question. I have a bunch of other tattoos, and this is not like, I'm getting my first tattoo ever. So probably what I'm gonna end up doing is my whole left arm is still blank. So probably what's gonna end up happening is I'm gonna get the New Edge logo and the Wingraph logo somewhere together on my left arm, because these are like the 2 big projects of my life these days. So that's the plan, but we'll see. Okay, I might just go and then no one will ever see it.
Right.
Or else just
get on on your left butt cheek, and then
Yeah, exactly.
So all right, yeah, congratulations. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'm really excited for the book to come out. Or the magazine, whenever that might be.
Yeah.
You know, these things take time. So one thing that I'd like to talk with people when we get them into like live streams like this is like, what got you into this stuff? Because I can tell you what got me into this. I was 9 years old and I watched Fellowship of the Ring because my aunt dragged me to the movie theater and I saw Legolas shooting arrows and I was like,
Oh
that's
yeah.
it. We're
Yeah.
done here. This
Yeah.
is the rest of my life.
Life's mission. Yeah, man, that's a great question, and the answer, the honest answer is I've been a fantasy nerd for so long that I can't even remember a time that I wasn't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly my older brother is to blame. You know, he's has got me into almost everything good in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like formative experiences, and I'm thinking back actually to when I used to live in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking beforehand, I was a little kid living in Maryland. I was probably 6 years old, and on public television they did a serialization of Wagner's Ring of the Nibelung, like the whole opera
Okay.
cycle. Uh, and you know, if you've ever seen those operas, or you know, if you know about them, you know, it's based on Germanic mythology, but it's basically all about like there's a magic ring,
Mm-hmm.
there's a dude with a magic sword who fights a dragon, you know, all the good stuff, basically, right? And a lot of it actually inspired Tolkien. And so yeah, I remember being a little kid and like watching this just like crazy weird thing about like this dude singing to his magic sword, right? And I was
Right.
just like being totally entranced, you know, and this is like late at night, you know, I'm probably supposed to be in bed and it's like public television trying to do some kind of cultural enrichment thing, but there I am as like this 6-year-old kid just being like magic swords and dragons and like just
Right.
totally tranced by this. So yeah, if there's
I
there's
want
one
a sword. Give me a sword.
exactly exactly.
All right. I mean, then, like, how long have you been playing? Like, have you been doing like tabletop
Yeah,
RPGs or?
yeah. I've been playing D&D. I don't even know, 30 years at this
Yeah.
point, probably maybe longer. Yeah, yeah. And again, I mean, that definitely comes back to my brother, who is still, you know, I mean, I just grew up with him, but he's still the best DM I've ever had. And I wish he played more, but
Mhm.
well, he's just a guy, I guess. But yeah, he's an incredible DM, and I just grew up playing with him all the time. And then, you know, he would have like his cool older friends over, and they would all play, and I would be like peering around the door,
Mhm.
like watching. So yeah,
Yeah. Most of the people in our band came like an opposite direction. Uh, we all LARPed. Well, I can't say we all did, but a lot of us LARPed before we played
really,
D&D, which normally
it's like
it's like you
like
ease
start.
your way into it, and then
I've never heard that.
so yeah, because I got into LARPing when I was 16, and I didn't play. One of my like teammates DM'd the first campaign I played in when I was 18. Um, so yeah, there's Aoife's in the chat, and she the accordion player, and she LARPed first before playing D&D.
Oh, interesting.
So we kind of like dove straight into the deep end as
Yeah,
far as nurture is concerned.
yeah.
Have you ever gone LARPing before?
Um, so short answer,
Mm-hmm.
no. Slightly longer answer is when I was I want to say 14, I was living in the New York area and I went to a Renaissance fair and there were representatives there from Nero, I think it's called, which is
Yeah.
like the New York area one. And it was the same thing where I was like, I had never heard of this LARPing thing, and it sounded like the most magical thing in existence. But you had to be 16, right? And
Oh.
I started literally like counting the months, right, until I turned 16 and I could join Nero. But by the time I actually was 16, I had left New York and gone to boarding school, so I missed
Mm-hmm.
the chance basically. So I actually never really have, and it's one of those things that I have always really wanted to do, and just kind of never had the opportunity.
If you find yourself in Maryland,
Yeah, like,
our games, the game that we play plays every two
whoa,
weeks. Um,
that's
so not that we don't get there every 2 weeks because none of us fight. We all just sort of play music and drink. Um, because so Bard City, the band, is also a country in our LARP game.
Wait, is the country called Bard City?
Yes. So it's all bards. We're in the middle of the desert because it's like you get like a map with like your country
Yeah.
borders on like hexes and stuff. Um, and yeah, we have infrastructure. It's not very good. Um, but we technically have a country, and that is so if you ever want to come down to
Yeah.
Virginia or Maryland, come play
Dude,
Dark.
I absolutely do. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, so that's you should try it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk more about Bard City Blues itself.
Yeah.
So this has been like I imagine this is not this has been a project that's been a long time coming, and it came into fruition last year, right? Like
Yeah.
2023
Yep.
was when the Kickstarter was.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah. So, the whole cozy fantasy thing started for me in like early 2021, which, as I'm sure we all recall, was sort of like high pandemic era, right? I mean,
Right.
this was every lockdown. You could only hang out with your like 10-person pod, right? And so that was going on, and then I'd also just had a major surgery that I had kind of complications after the surgery, and I'd been in the hospital for like 3 weeks, and didn't, but everything was locked down, and so nobody could come to visit me, right? So I was just like alone in a hospital room. So anyway, all that is to say that at this point I had, everybody was going through some shit, and I was looking for something to basically just make me feel better. And so I started trying to find cozy fantasy, right? And even back then, that was kind of like the phrase that had been percolating around.
Mhm.
But the problem was, at that point, there was no central clearinghouse for information. I mean, people couldn't even agree on what cozy fantasy meant,
Mhm.
right? You would Google the term, and you'd get like a bunch of random Reddit threads of people recommending whatever book they happen to think of, right? And so there was no agreement about what it was. There was no Really, what I'm trying to say is Legends and Lattes hadn't come out yet, right? So there was
Yeah.
sort of breakout hit that made everybody aware of it and started to help define the genre.
Mhm.
Um, and so, it was sort of like I found a couple books, and some of them were good, but it kept bugging me that it was like somebody needs to try to do something to pin this down, right? And so at the start of 2022, I basically said, well, I am gonna what is it, the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you know a little bit and you don't
Right. You don't know what you
know.
don't
Yeah,
know,
so
and
it's like, how hard could it possibly be to publish a magazine? So so I started Wingraph, and I announced it in February of 2022, and that was literally like a week before Travis Baldree announced Legends and Lattes, right? And so it was like I got in basically right as the whole thing was about to take off,
right.
um, and so for the first year, basically, I was just focused on the magazine. We did 2 issues in the magazine the first year. And then last year, 2023, was all about let's just try a bunch of new stuff and kind of see if any of it succeeds. Who knows, right? But I'm trying to sort of spread out from just the magazine into other formats, right? Um, and so one of those things was, obviously, I had been writing Bard City Blues.
Mhm.
Um, and I said, well, why don't we try publishing a novel and see how that does, and B, try running our first crowdfunding campaign, which is something
Mhm.
I've been wanting to try. And so back in May of last year, we did the crowdfunder, and I was like, I'm just going to set the goal very realistic. I think it was like $860 or $890, something like that. So,
Enough
like,
to cover
yeah,
expenses and
exactly. I'm not going to get paid anything. I just want to cover, like, the art
mhm.
and printing. And maybe this will be a disaster, maybe it'll fund. That would be cool. So we ended up funding in about an hour and 45 minutes, and then the whole thing. I mean, literally, like after the first 5 days, I think, we had blown through all the stretch goals that I had come up with, like including the ones that I never thought were going to be
Right.
hit. I was scrambling to like come up with more stretch goals just to try to keep feeding the machine, you know. And so, yeah, ended up funding at a little under $6,000. Um, and it was just like, oh shit, this actually went way beyond my wildest dreams.
Mm.
Uh, and part of what we funded as stretch goals also is the sequel, which maybe we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, the book itself, you know, I got to do a bunch of interior art. I got to
Mm.
do a color insert in the paperback, which was really cool. I got to do like this deluxe hardcover edition, which had different cover art and like a dust jacket and printing on the interior, you know, and like just
Mm.
every like crazy thing that I'd always wanted to try, and I was just throwing stuff at the wall, and like, we just kept hitting the stretch goals. So I
Right.
was like, all right, we're just doing everything
Right.
for
Yeah.
this book.
I mean, as long as the people are saying yes, please do more. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh shit, I guess we.
yeah,
That's. I mean, it's a
exactly. You
good
know,
problem to have.
and it's you know, it's clear that cozy fantasy is something that people have been looking for. You know, I mean, people were exactly in my situation a few years ago, where
Mm.
you're googling it and you're trying to like express what you're looking for and you're having trouble finding it, you know. But we just sort of hit this moment where it all kind of gelled, and now it's just the whole genre is just completely taken off, you know. And I'm a tiny little part of that, but you know, from the scale that I'm operating on, it's just been a massive success.
Yeah, the cozy fantasy. Like, I am not really like. I'm new to like reading fantasy literature. It's the book club that has been like getting me to read more fiction.
Okay.
Um, so I mean, Aoife is like our kind of resident knowledge. Aoife and Winners are like they are the experts on like fantasy lit, and I'm just kind of like the sort of like, oh, that's nice, you know. Um, but I love just the like the energy of like the cozy fantasy stories of just whether it's like a short story or it's Broad City Blues, of course, Red Legends and Lattes. Then it's just what am I trying to capture? It's just like, can we just chill for a moment? You know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like, does it have to be all sword and sorcery? Does it have to be like solving our problems by hitting them with swords until they're not problems anymore? Which is great. I mean, I love that shit. Let's be
Yeah. Oh,
perfectly clear. That's awesome, but not all the time. Sometimes you want to like a breath of fresh air. And one of the one of the things I really liked about Bard City Blues in particular um, was the fact that it was, you know, the conflict didn't come from, you know, like adventuring, but there's still like, you know, cloak and dagger, there's still mystery, there's still all of that, but a lot of what's being told in the story is more interpersonal
yeah,
and less, you know, the army of the evil guys versus the army of the good
yeah,
guys.
yeah.
And yeah, the I'm not gonna talk too in depth about the mystery because I want people to read this freaking book. Uh, yeah, I know. But I liked there's there was a few moments in the story where I'm just like, no way, are you serious? Um, and like in particular, I do remember one spot, which again I will not get into details, and you can ask me later, and I'll share with you what
Yeah.
that part in the book was. 'Cause you know the book, you wrote it. But there was a moment where it was the perfect time where I had to take a break, and so I just like left it on that, and it just sort of stewed in my head, and I'm like, "This is are you kidding me, man." But yeah, like so you have the you know the starving artist, the musician who's trying to
Yeah.
make it, um, and then you have on top of that, you've got mystery, you've got conflict, and you've got you know this. You still have like there's still it's not just like a story where everything goes right, you know. It's not that.
No, definitely not.
Uh,
Yeah, and I mean, I think cozy fantasy is something that, you know, we're still trying to pin down what exactly it means, and I think there is a lot of space there for sort of the slice of life story where there isn't really any conflict, right? And I've published stuff like that in Wingraph,
mm,
but you know, to sustain an entire novel, like you can't just you can't just have everything going great and everybody gets what they want for 90,000 words. I mean, that would be a very boring book.
Right.
But, you know, talking about having, you know, fantasy stories where it's not about armies clashing and people killing each other. I mean, part of the challenge for me writing this book was all the other novels I've written, you know, when it comes to conflict, there's just a bunch of physical violence, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know, and that stuff is a blast. But really saying to myself, okay, I want to write a book that is as engaging and exciting and tense, but that has no physical violence at all. And I didn't quite get there. There's a sort of a battle with well, this isn't too bad to spoil. There's sort of a battle with an elemental at one point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know,
But
no people hurt each other, and you know, nobody is like ever injured or killed or anything like that, right? And yeah, I mean, it's tough, man. You got to do a lot more character work because you can't just kind of have thin characters and then cool fight scenes, right? Because if you take out the cool fight scenes, all you've got left is the characters.
right. Yeah. And you need to have solid, well-written characters to actually carry the story. Yeah. And if your characters are unlikable, then like, good luck, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that was another thing I really enjoyed. Like I mean, the main duo, Gali and Alex, loved them. But you could have also written an 80,000 word book of just Zolgoth just eating, doing dishes. Like,
you know, I actually I find it so gratifying because so Zolgoth is the dishwasher at the bar where Gally works, and he's just a gelatinous cube basically, and he lives in a shelf, and you know, people feed him dishes, and he dissolves all the crud off, right? And it was one of those things where like I'll be honest, like when I first conceptualized it, I just thought, oh, it'd be funny if they had a gelatinous cube that did the dishes, and he wasn't gonna be a character or like be able to talk or anything. It was just gonna be a gelatinous cube. And then I got to that point and I was like, I feel like I should give him a name and some dialogue.
right.
And then I started writing him, and immediately I was like, this is now clearly the best character in the book. Like, so much fun to write his dialogue and every scene with him. And so it's been very gratifying that basically everybody who reads the book feels that way.
Right.
Like, so just so many people have said, and in so many reviews, he's their favorite character, bar none. And I was like, yeah, I know, he's mine too.
Yeah, I mean, he has a tendency to steal the scene wherever he's in. I do love the oh, by the way, I've changed, and you don't have to wear the glove anymore. You can just
yeah. The great thing about writing Zolgoth is basically like, that's just my innate personal weirdness that I'm finally allowing to like let out. It's just like whatever weird stuff and whatever weird phrasing that I think of, like that's Zolgoth dialogue. And then for everything else, I have to try to be normal. But Zolgoth is probably most close to who I really am as a person.
Excellent. Yeah, I really this, and you had a whole ensemble cast that's a lot of fun. Again, the owner of the bar who immediately called out, I like her a lot.
Yeah.
She's great. The whole story goes in ways that you don't expect. I liked it very much. And for anyone who is watching this stream and you're looking for a book to read, Bard City Blues. You can buy it on Amazon. Anywhere else can you buy it?
Yeah. Oh man. So the physical book is only on Amazon because this edition is just the Amazon POD. Yeah. But if you're looking for the ebook, I mean, it's basically everywhere. It's on Smashwords, Apple Books, Kobo. I can't remember the other ones. Everand, Barnes and Noble. Right. Anywhere pretty much that you can get ebooks, you can get it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still gonna keep talking about it. I'm just doing the plug in the middle of the conversation.
Nice.
Because people come and go.
Yeah,
so
I love it.
Hey, look, we're plugging this again for the people who just joined us or the people who are going to leave before the end of the conversation. This is a good. I don't think I'm not sure if it comes. The selfie video for me has it reversed.
No, it's backwards, but
is it backwards? Oh, okay.
Nathaniel Webb, because that's me.
Yeah. Bard City Blues. It's easy to remember because it's our band plus blues.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun. Yeah, the the characters were very fun. I did think the imagery of like setting it in winter was very cool too, where it's like everything's cold, and that in fiction when things are chilly, I don't know, that just gets me. But that's just a personal quirk.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it gives
you
you
can feel it, you know, like
yeah, it's a very much a mood,
mm,
and I live in Maine, where I mean we it's the end of March, and just this past weekend we had like a massive ice storm that knocked out power to the whole city for a couple of days. So so winter is something I'm very well acquainted with.
mm,
And I wanted to capture that winter vibe, but also the fact that then winter lets you be cozy in a specific way, right? Because when it's storming and blustery and freezing cold outside, but
mm.
you're and you're sitting by the fire with the people you care about, that's so cozy. So yeah, it gave me a lot to work with in a lot of different ways.
Right. I know you were talking about how, like, beginning of 2021, when, the whole world was on fire.
But
Um,
everything was
uh,
terrible.
Everything was terrible, was when you kind of were like, you know what if we wrote something that wasn't so terrible?
Yeah.
I mean, that was actually a similar vibe to, like, in a way, how we got our start, because we got together as a band in 2022.
Oh, no kidding.
Um, yeah, but it was during the pandemic when everything shut down, and I remember like concerts getting shut down. I'm like, okay, I get it, that sucks, and
Terrible.
conventions got shut down. It's obvious things happen. We got to be responsible. And then when the Ren Fair shut down, like that was the right call to make,
Yeah.
but my heart hurt,
Yeah.
and I
It's
was like, wait a minute, but Ren
yeah.
Fair, and like coming out of like when like the shots were first starting to go out and like things were starting to calm down, I was like, all I want to do is dress funny, have a pitcher full of beer, either listen to someone play trad music or playing it myself. Like that's what I want to
Yeah.
do.
Goals, man.
Right. So we hadn't been I hadn't been LARPing in like probably like 5 or 6 years at that point. I had been spending more of my time going to like anime conventions and doing cosplay and all
Yeah.
that. So I reached out to Onion, our guitar player, and Francielle, the mayor, and I said, "Hey guys, we haven't been LARPing together in a long, long time. There is a 5-day event in Virginia at a winery. Do you want to go?
Wow.
I would like to go." So I piled in all of my instruments, and um, like I was like, all I want to be is in. And the winery that we played at, or that we went to, has this sort of tasting room that they let LARPs rent. I mean,
Okay.
they let you rent the whole winery and you camp
Yeah.
out. But the tasting room is there, and they stay open later to sell wine to nerds. Um, and that Thursday night of sitting down and we basically just did a giant session and played music. And that is that cozy vibe
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
so
Yes.
good.
It's exactly the vibe. Yeah.
And
Uh, I
it's
love
perfect.
it,
And
man.
it's just it's so great. And that is like what you get with Bard City Blues and with Cozy Fantasy just in general. It's just this wonderful, just like getting together and having people together and making art and doing cool stuff. I'm getting all
Yeah,
high.
that's we were talking earlier about the fact that I want to bring uh, a lot of my shitty experiences as a working musician when I was younger to the book. But there's also a lot of the good stuff in there, right? And
Mhm.
I'm sure the whole found family theme. If you're in the right band, that's like a found family, And
Right.
and one of the bands that I played with, those guys are still like brothers to me. I mean, I still talk to them constantly despite having moved away. I was in one of their weddings. It's like
Right. Yeah.
those guys were like my family for a couple of years. And so that in general, and then more specifically, exactly what you're talking about, that feeling of sitting down, everybody who wants a drink has a drink in their hand, and you're just kind of playing music and goofing around, and it goes on way too late in the night. You
You're
know, that
right.
experience is like, there's something so magical about that, you know, I tried to capture at least.
Yeah, I think you did like a good job, especially like the first time where she like goes up and like you know you've got the story, the description of people starting to like tap along and like I'm bringing like mountain tunes, you know, and like are people gonna like it
Yeah,
here? And of course,
yeah,
you know, the trying to look around and you're well, that's another thing with the something that I thought of that was like obviously a musician had written this was the knowing a song by heart so well that you've got the muscle memory for it. You're doing the song almost
yeah,
subconsciously, and you're looking at the crowd and being like, okay, how are they feeling about this? Because you
yeah,
don't have to worry about, you don't have to think about what's the next chord, what's the next line. You've got that like so down.
yeah.
So you're like, what is that guy in the back corner? Okay, he's tapping along. That's good. Okay, that this woman looks pissed off.
Yeah, but I think you have to get to that point, you know, as a performing musician, because you know if you're standing there trying to remember like what are the chords, what's my part, you know, maybe you'll make it through the song, but you're not able to kind of get to that next step of engaging with the room, right?
Right.
And that is sort of a running theme in the book is just Galley's ability to sort of read a room and to read people, and
Mm,
to take control of a room when she needs to. And that, you know, it's a big part of the ending of the book as well.
yeah.
You know, and it's weird because it's sort of, it's a related skill to just playing the music because you have to be playing music well. But it's a different skill and something that you have to cultivate intentionally, I think.
Yeah, to become from a musician to like a performer might
Exactly.
be like a good.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like a yeah. When you know a song so well and you're in the middle of a performance and you think like, did I leave the oven on? Like shit.
Yeah.
um, like we had a song we were playing at Gen Con last year,
Oh, nice.
and the room that we played in was rated for PG-13, and of course we've got you know fuck words
Yeah.
in our songs.
I
We're allowed to
think
swear.
you get
This is
one
our
of
own
those per
stream, by the way.
movie, right? And it's still PG-13.
Yeah, this one had 3 if you did it right.
Uh,
Um, but it was you know it's roll that die, and you know if you roll low, it didn't fucking work. Um, and I'm seeing the room, people are vibing with the music, and I look around and I'm like, I don't see any staffers here, and just
so
like,
we're just gonna go for
I
it.
don't think like there was one baby, but that baby was like 9 months old, and I knew that they were not going to understand any
Yeah,
of it.
free language.
So we're fine here, you know. And I also knew their parents, so like
Ah, there you
they
go.
were gonna,
Yeah.
yeah. The so being able to like read the room and be like, am I gonna do this? Am I gonna do this? This whole song is playing, and I'm like, sure. And it's didn't fucking work. Woo! All that stuff. So yeah, being able to that internal monologue
Yes.
in the book
Yeah.
is was very fun, very relatable. I quite enjoyed that part.
Good. I'm glad. I mean, honestly, like the highest compliments, in my opinion, of people who've read the book are when other musicians say, you know,
Oh
either
yeah.
people have either said just I love the depictions of music, or people have said I can tell it was written by a musician because it felt so real. And to me, that's
Mm,
like, oh, it gives me the warm fuzzies. You know,
you
I
did
feel
a
like
good
I've
job
achieved
there.
what I have to do.
I'm going to do another name drop real
Yeah.
quick. For those of you, this is mirrored, but for those of you who are just joining in, we've got Nathaniel Webb here, author of Bard City Blues. It's the light is blowing it out. But author of Bard City Blues. So if you want to look it up, you can look up Bard City, like our band, and then add blues to the end of it. And you can buy the book on Amazon or anywhere you can get an ebook.
Yes.
We're sitting here chatting about just general fantasy. We're talking about the book. Um, and so yeah. Also, if anyone has like any questions
Oh,
that they
yeah.
want to ask the author, feel free. Just throw it in the comments. And so what else I want to? So sequel though.
Yes.
You so you successfully passed all of your wildest dreams when it came to the stretch goals, and included in that stretch goal include book 2,
Yes.
which is already funded.
Yeah,
which is at the end of the book. It is the Great Elvish Bake Off,
that's it.
correct?
Great Elvish Bake Off. Yeah.
Yes. So, please, yeah, we got the back of it. Oh, again, not that I am to read. Oh, look at the cool
Backwards of
illustrations, though.
there's Galley.
There, that's
I love.
the main. Oh, I flipped off the camera. That's the main character right there.
Yes, I love that.
Um, so, please do tell.
Yeah. So, the Great Elvish Bake Off, as the name probably implies, is sees our characters from the first book basically getting roped into taking part in this sort of traveling fantastical baking competition. Uh,
Nice.
so the the main thing that I wanted to do with this book is at Wingraph we talk about something called backpack fantasy,
Mhm.
uh, which possibly I invented that term. It's not entirely clear because I feel like I picked it up somewhere, but it doesn't. Nobody seems to have actually said it on the internet before Wingraph started talking about it, so I'm
I
not
can
sure.
I can confirm that you 100% coined that phrase. And if anyone
There you go.
disagrees, I will sue them.
Perfect.
Um,
Perfect. That's legally binding. So there you go.
legally.
Yeah, but so when we talk about backpack fantasy, basically we're talking about cozy fantasy on the road, right? So it's sort of the travel stories, adventure stories, and all the cozy things that can happen out of that, right? That you don't get if you stay at home. So, you know, sitting around the campfire telling stories or sleeping out under the stars, standing on the prow of a sailing ship and feeling the wind in your hair, right? All those amazing experiences that you get from travel.
Mhm.
And so basically with this book, I wanted to write a backpack fantasy book, right? Because Bard City Blues, the whole thing takes place in one city. It's winter, so they're staying inside, right? So I wanted to do something with travel. And so the conceit basically is there's the Great Elvish Bake Off, which is this yearly baking competition. But everybody who's involved with it basically is on a river boat, right? Like a sailing ship that's going down the river. And so then they're kind of stopping off at different places along the way to have the different rounds of the competition. And so you get a lot of travel. I get to write about sailing ships a lot, which is something also that is a big goal of mine because I am a huge sailing ship nerd.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for Lord of the Rings, I was a kid who was really into Horatio Hornblower.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, I've read all the Hornblower books like probably 5 times at this
Yeah,
point. Yeah,
if I had gotten if I hadn't seen Lord of the Rings and I saw Master and Commander, I would have just been down that,
yeah,
you know?
but yeah, gone a totally different path. You'd be out in
Right.
the sea even now. Yeah,
You
so
get to
you
write
know
about
exactly what I'm
sailing.
talking about, right? So yeah, I've been wanting to write a sailing ship book for a long time, and actually, my dad, who was in the Navy, uh, basically has been bugging me for years now because like I casually mentioned like, oh yeah, I'm kind of thinking about like writing a book with sailing ships, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And like
Mhm.
every once in a while my dad will be like, hey, you writing that sailing book yet? You writing that sailing book yet?
You write that
So
book?
yeah, book, you got it. So I'm finally doing it. And
Fantastic.
then the other cool thing is then I get to do sort of a travelogue of the wider world, right? Because again, the first book, it's all just in one city.
Mhm.
But here we get to kind of stop off and see a bunch of different cities and other places, and spend a little time in each of them, which is obviously super, super fun because I get to show off world building, but it also just gives a really different vibe to the book, right? So this is
Yeah,
like taking the show on the road, essentially.
fantastic. Yeah. Also, I guess see Aoife commenting here saying I was still a little bit convinced Horatio Hornblower was something Barrick made up. No,
No,
it's great.
it's real. It's real. And I will say, because it's such a ridiculous name, that it is a plot point in the books that he has a ridiculous name and he feels embarrassed about his name, and it's very humanizing to the character.
Mhm. Yeah, I did not understand the internal monologue because I just thought Horatio Hornblower was a badass because I my
Yeah.
introduction was the BBC show, I guess. Was
Oh
it
yeah.
BBC? Um, um, but whatever the show was, that but you don't hear the internal panic and anxiety
Yeah.
of the
Yeah,
character.
that's what's so compelling about him as a character is that like he is a badass. You know, he's a super successful naval officer, and
Mhm.
as you read the series of books, you know he starts as a midshipman and he gets
Right.
promoted and becomes a captain, and eventually becomes an admiral and every. You know, so you see like his whole career, and it's like he's just awesome. But inside his head, he's constantly doubting himself. He's constantly panicking, you know, thinking like everybody hates him and he's going to make a fool out of himself. I mean, it's such a cool
Right.
juxtaposition, you know, but then
But
he
in the
also has
show,
adventures.
in the show, we don't get the insert, so we only get the like the
Yeah.
him being a badass, and you're
Yeah.
like, wow, that guy's great. But in his brain, he's like, oh god, I'm gonna fall.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So by the way, I didn't think I was gonna be talking about Horatio Hornblower today.
Here we are. Here we are.
But yeah, so Tall Ships, I am very excited to read a story with Tall Ships and all the trappings on that.
The other great
So
thing is that it lets me write about sea shanties. So
there we go. There we go.
yeah.
You know?
Yep. I know what I'm
So
doing.
yeah, so for the sake of your father and for the sake of me, please, please get that book out.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the other thing about this book is that it's horribly, horribly behind schedule. I foolishly promised a delivery date that was wildly unrealistic. We're months past that now, but you know, just to be clear to anybody who is watching this and waiting for the sequel, I'm working on it. I'm just a slow writer, so it'll be out when it's out. But it's, you know, nothing has gotten in the way except my own slowness.
Do it right, do it once kind of thing. You know, you can't unrelease a bad book, so do it
Exactly.
properly.
Yeah, and especially after Bard City Blues, which has gotten such a good response, you know, far and
Mhm.
away my most successful novel. It's like I don't want to just like pump out a bad book as the sequel. Like I got to try to live up to what I did with the
Right.
first one.
Yeah, you gotta go for it and make it actually good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe in you. I think you got it in you.
Thank you.
And I love the term backpack fantasy because first off, you're a man after my own heart. You've got backpack fantasy talking about camping and tall ships. I'm also an avid backpacker, so like,
Oh.
I totally get the idea of coziness of being out on the trail or out on the road and like just going out and doing a fun adventure. This is cool. I want to read the book.
You will, I promise. It's coming. It's just taking its sweet time. And writing a sequel is hard, man. Honestly,
Right.
like, 'cause you write the first book, and it ends at a point where, like, all the characters are content. They've all gone through their arcs, and
Mhm.
they've all achieved self-actualization. And then you got to go write a sequel where it's like, wait, now I have to come up with more conflict for these people to go through, especially in a character-driven book. Because I've
Right.
written sequels before, but it was like it's the same characters; they're just fighting somebody different, you know.
Mhm.
But in a book like this, where all the conflict is interpersonal conflict, it's like coming up with things that they can go through that feel real to the characters and also don't walk back any of the progress that they made in the previous book,
Right.
right? Because there's nothing more annoying than, you know, I mean, this happens a lot in TV shows, especially, but when there's a character that you care about, they go through a big arc and they change, and then suddenly, like, they're just back, and it's like it never happened, right? I mean, that
Mhm.
just, like, it irritates me so much. So I really, really don't want to do that with this book. You know, I want everybody to keep moving forward, but still obviously having things that they need to overcome. So that's has been a much higher mountain to climb than I expected.
So somehow Palpatine returned, you know,
Right.
like
Exactly. We're trying to not be at that level.
right. Like, well, you know, so Golly lost her guild membership.
Yeah.
Just for whatever reason, just because we need to do that again, I guess.
Yeah, she moved to a new city with a different guild and just
Right.
has to yeah, that would be terrible, and we're not
Right.
doing
Yeah, broke up with old girlfriend, needs to find a new girl.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
No,
Better than
that's
that.
awesome. Yeah, that's so I think that's a pretty good spot to wrap it up. I'm gonna do one more like name drop of the book. All right, so again, we've got Bard City Blues. Again, this is backwards because it's reversed. It's a selfie video, so sorry guys. But Bard City Blues, look at this cool art. That's not backwards. I mean, it is backwards, but
it still works.
it's
Yeah, man.
fun.
I love that cover. Lucas Marquez Oliveira did that for me, and I was like, I can't believe you're so good.
Yeah, it's spectacular. Yeah, absolutely love it. It's got bars, it's got music, it's got bards, and it's got a gelatinous cube that does dishes. That's awesome, and he also wants to kill you, and that's great. So again, if you're looking for a cozy fantasy book, just look for Bard City Blues. It's very easy because it's our band plus blues. Um, and I would highly recommend it. I quite enjoyed the story. And if you want to like do any more like name dropping of any future projects, or feel you got time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
talk about yourself.
So basically, if you want to keep up with what we're doing, the easiest thing to do would be, let's see. Um, well, the easiest thing to do is I started in this game so early that I actually own the domain name cozyfantasy.com. So
Hell,
if you go to cozyfantasy.com, that takes you to the Wingraph website, actually the revamped brand new Wingraph website, which is my little publishing company
mhm.
where we put out Bard City Blues and we'll put out the sequel, but we've also got a magazine of cozy fantasy short stories. We've got we published a novella. We have a flash fiction collection. We have a poetry book. There's all kinds of stuff. It's all cozy fantasy themed. That is the single thing that we are laser focused on putting out. And so if you go there, you can find, links to all the issues of the magazine, all the books, everything we've put out. And then if you go to the free stories section, then there's also a link to sign up for our newsletter. It's an email mailing list. We do usually twice a month. If I'm feeling peppy, maybe sometimes once a month if I'm feeling lazy. But if you sign up for the newsletter, you get 15 short stories for free. So it's a great way to just get a bunch of cozy fantasy to read. And then, of course, it'll help you stay up to date on everything I'm doing and everything Wingraph is doing as a publisher.
Right on. Well, again, thank you very much for taking some time out of your day to join us. This is an absolutely fantastic conversation. We started with cocktails and ended with tall ships at Horatio Hornbar. Um, Not exactly where I was expecting it to go, but I am very pleased about it.
Me too,
Um,
man. Thank you
so,
so much for having me. This was an absolute blast.
all right, yeah. We're gonna. This was our like author interview on our Instagram live, and thank you very much for joining us. And sorry for the technical difficulties at the very beginning, but this was a lot of fun. So please, anyone, you can follow Nathaniel at Nat20Writes or at Wingraph, which is WYNGRAF. And also just worked on a new project with New Edge Sword Magazine. And wait, no, shoot, that's did I get the tag right?
A New Edge Sword and Sorcery.
Yes, there we go. Cool.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I got the tag. And we'll post links to that in our story right now. So again, thank you guys very much. We will catch you guys later. And all right, bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Catch you all later. And now time to exit out.